For 6 centuries, the Ottoman Empire stood as one of the most powerful forces in history, stretching across 3 continents and shaping the world with its armies, culture, and unmatched leadership. Yet while its banners flew proudly over vast lands, cracks had already begun to form deep inside the empire's foundations. In the silent corridors of Topkapi Palace, where once the footsteps of disciplined sultans echoed with authority, a different sound now lingered. Whispers of corruption, hesitation, and growing weakness. The early Ottoman rulers had been warriors, strategists, and reformers, but as the generations passed, many sultans became prisoners of luxury, detached from their people and blind to the storms gathering beyond their palace walls. Advisors played dangerous games for power, the court filled with political plots, and the discipline that had built the empire slowly began to rot. The Janissaries, once the most elite and loyal fighting force in the world, symbolized this decay. Created to protect the throne, they eventually turned into its biggest threat. They resisted every reform that challenged their privileges, rebelled against sultans, and even toppled rulers who tried to modernize the army. The empire that had once expanded through strength now struggled to control its own soldiers. At the same time, Europe was transforming. The Industrial Revolution roared across the continent, filling cities with factories, machines, railways, and telegraph lines. Armies modernized with new weapons, new strategies, and new technology. But the Ottomans remained trapped in old traditions, slow to reform and resistant to change. The world was modernizing rapidly, and the empire simply could not keep up. The economic collapse made things even worse. Years of war, internal corruption, and mismanagement drained the treasury. To survive, the empire borrowed heavily from European powers, signing loan after loan without realizing how deeply it was falling into dependency. With every treaty, a piece of Ottoman sovereignty slipped away into foreign hands. Then came the rise of nationalism. The Balkans, once the empire's strength, exploded with rebellion. Greeks, Serbs, Bulgarians, Romanians, peoples who had lived under Ottoman rule for centuries, now demanded independence. Every uprising weakened the empire, taking land, resources, and pride with it. The once mighty Ottoman map was shrinking before the world's eyes. Amid this chaos, a group known as the Young Turks emerged, demanding reform and a return to strength. They overthrew Sultan Abdulhamid II and promised a new beginning. But the empire was too fractured, too wounded, and too divided to respond to change. Political instability grew, ethnic tensions intensified, and power shifted too rapidly for stability to take root. Instead of healing the empire, the reforms deepened the divisions. And just as the Ottomans struggled to find their footing, the world was pulled into one of the deadliest conflicts in history, World War I. The Ottomans entered the war hoping to regain lost strength, but instead they faced one of the harshest tests ever known. From the brutal battlefields of Gallipoli to the deserts of Mesopotamia and Arabia, the empire fought desperately on multiple fronts, stretched too thin with too few resources. Soldiers fought bravely, but courage was not enough to save an empire riddled with internal wounds. Famine spread, cities collapsed, and leaders struggled to hold the nation together as enemies closed in. By 1918, exhausted and broken, the Ottoman Empire signed an armistice that marked the end of 600 years of power. From these ashes rose a new nation, Turkey, led by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, who pushed for modernization and a new identity, separate from the empire's troubled past. But even as Turkey looked forward, the silence of the fallen empire lingered in the abandoned corridors of its palaces, in its forgotten thrones, and in the memories of the millions who had lived under its rule. The Ottoman Empire did not disappear suddenly. It faded slowly, over centuries of internal weakness, lost opportunities, and the refusal to adapt to a changing world. And in the end, it did not fall simply because it was defeated by enemies. It fell because it stopped defending itself.